Hello Internet, this is Sam Messman with another Final Cut 10 workflow tutorial. In this one we're going to be covering the Final Cut 10 to Resolve workflow and what safely comes in and out. And what I've got here is a sequence of a few clips that we're going to be using for testing purposes to see what comes in Resolve and what comes out and what works and what doesn't with your XMLs. And in this first clip here, I've got a red raw clip that I've turned the tint up all the way so that we'll be able to quickly recognize whether the raw changes we made in Final Cut 10 reflect in our XML when we bring it into Resolve. In the second clip, I've changed the Spatial Conform settings to fill to see whether the Spatial Conform settings that you set on your red footage are going to come through. And in this third clip, I've changed the transform and more specifically the position and rotation properties. I've also set the spatial conform settings to none just to see what kind of scaling and transformation properties come through in and out of Resolve. In the next few clips, I have Multicam Clips that where I switch between the angles 2 times from a podcast to see how Multicam responds with Resolve. And then with the next series of clips, I have a bunch of synchronized clips that I've done various corrections to. In this first one, I've made a primary correction to it on a single correction to see whether that transfers to Resolve. And in the second one, I've done a primary correction as well as a secondary correction where I've placed a vignette on the correction, which I'm going to turn on there. And as you can see, it's very obvious that I've manipulated some of the vignette controls, and if you jump in there, I'm going to turn on the outside ring and adjust the blacks up and down. I want to make it noticeable because basically I want to see whether this is going to come into Resolve or not. And then in the next clip, I have the same clip with a keying effect applied to it, as well as a motion generator that I've adjusted the parameters for. And we're going to see how motion generators and effects behave. And then in the next series of clips, I've used the Tokyo Split animation plugins from Noise Industries to see whether some of these effects and layer stacks are going to come through in Resolve and whether or not I should apply these before or after I've gone through color correction. Lastly, I have a drop zone end tag that actually we use for We Make Movies that has video dropped into the drop zones already and text that's already been relabeled. And here what I want to see is whether these drop zones will be reapplied, what's going to happen to this motion generator when it goes into Resolve and when it comes back out, and whether any of this information is retained. Anyway, let's go ahead and get some of these clips into Resolve. So what you're going to want to do is go over to File, Export XML. And you're going to go ahead and save this XML. I've made a directory called Resolve XML and to Resolve, and I'm going to save this as Resolve Clips. And the next step is I'm going to step into DaVinci Resolve, and let's go ahead and load up the program and bring in the XML. And I'm making a new project called Resolve Clips that I'm going to push Create on. I'm going to double click to open it. And this initial media screen here is where you can preview and drag media into your media pool. The general workflow for this is you click on a folder and you can select a few of the clips and drag those into the media pool. That's one way to go about doing it. In this scenario, we actually have an XML that we're going to be bringing in, so we actually don't need to spend much time here. But if you wanted to do it, all you would need to do is go and drag around a group of clips, and the waveforms are loading up here, and simply drag them into the media pool. And the clips that you drag into the media pool are the clips that Resolve will reference when it either brings in an XML or the clips that you can grade in your master timeline. So anyway, we're going to delete these out of the media pool, and we're going to jump into the Conform tab, and we're going to import our XML that we just made in Final Cut 10. So go into the timelines and right-click and click Import AAF EDL XML, and we're going to go find our XML, which is called Resolve Clips, and I'm going to select that, and I'm going to open it. And you're going to see this dialog box open, and with a bunch of different options. In our case, the only two we really need to check are use sizing information and use color information. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring in the transform and color information that we had in Final Cut 10 and place it automatically on our clips in Resolve. So let's see how we did. I'm scrolling through the timeline. It looks like all of our clips came in except for the motion clips and our transitions, which appear as black slug or don't show up at all. And it looks like our color information has somewhat passed through. That doesn't really look like the grade that we put on there in Final Cut 10. It also doesn't look like our vignette appeared there either. However, our raw color information did come through, but it also doesn't look like our spatial conform settings came through, even though our transform and rotation parameters seem to have. And in general, all of our media that we needed to come through seems to have. And if we try and play it back, we can play it all back here, and we seem to be getting solid playback. So let's go ahead and jump into the color tab and start grading. And we're going to play back some red footage here. And if you notice, the playback is really stuttery and really slow. It says we're getting 15.5 frames per second. I don't really believe that, so let's fix that. Let's go down to that little gear icon and select that and go into the camera raw tab. We're going to switch over our debayer setting to quarter res good and click apply. And now we're going to jump back in and play back, and you'll see that playback is extremely smooth, and our real-time settings are solid. If you don't have a Red Rocket card, basically you want to change your debayer setting to something that your computer can handle so that you can grade and get real-time playback and really get a sense of what you're seeing. Now, if we go down to the bottom left-hand here, you'll see that we are in our red raw controls. And you have 4 different options under decode using. And basically what these options do, if you select clip, you can affect your raw settings. However, my recommendation is that you do your raw settings before you come into Resolve, even out all of your raw so that you can ignore this tab. I kind of feel like the red settings in Resolve are a little bit clunkier than where they are in Red Cine X, etc. So my recommendation would be for raw settings, do it elsewhere, and then take advantage of the color tools in Resolve, which are fantastic. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time detailing those or even grading any of these clips here because I want to see how those come back into Final Cut 10. That's the purpose of this, is to see what comes in and what comes out. So just know that the color controls in DaVinci Resolve are far better than what you have access to elsewhere. But I want to go spend some time over in the Deliver tab now. And let's set our red settings back. I'm going to set mine to half res premium because we're in a 1080 sequence and that's all I really need to do. A full res debayer is going to take more time than I want to spend here, and it's not going to improve the quality all that much. And I'm going to change my easy setup to Final Cut Pro XML round trip. And the following in here are your render settings. You can leave most of these alone. The one that I would really specify is under Browse. Let's specify a place for Resolve to render our media to. And I'm going to select the Resolve folder in the directory structure, and I'm going to add a new folder. And I'm going to call this folder Resolve Clips. And I'm going to click OK, and that's where Resolve is going to send my media to. And taking a look at some of these other settings here, you can have a data burn-in preset where basically you can watermark something if you're worried a client isn't going to pay you or they haven't paid you yet, and then once they pay you, you can remove it. You can also create an additional output which will send something out into another codec of your choice. We're not going to do that right now. And then if you go down under output options, you can add handles if you'd like. I'm not going to do that in this case either. And anyway, finally, I'm just going to add the job, and then I'm going to select it, and I'm going to go over and start my render. And basically what's going to happen now is Resolve is going to go through and render out all of my footage to the directory that I just specified. And then I'm going to, once that's done, export an XML and bring it back into Final Cut. So let me show you how to export that XML. And we're back in our Conform tab now, and what we're going to do is it's pretty similar to how we brought it in, which is to go back into the timeline section, and instead of right-clicking, we're just going to go to the File menu and Export XML. And it's going to bring up the dialog. I'm going to save this to my Resolve folder under XML and from Resolve. And then I'm going to relabel it Resolve _ clips _ from Resolve. And I'm going to click Save. And now it's time to go and bring that back into Final Cut 10. And we're back in Final Cut 10, and I have the drive that I want the XML to import to. And I'm going to go to Import XML. And I'm going to go from Resolve and select the XML we just made, and I'm going to click Import. And basically Final Cut 10 is going to make a new project based on the XML names. See, this is called Resolve _ clips in parentheses Resolve, and it's also made a new event on the drive that I specified of the same name as the project. Now when we step into our events browser, you'll see that Final Cut is referencing the exports we made in Resolve. It's no longer referencing our original clips. That happened automatically when we created the XML. Resolve found the job directory to that XML, and now, as you can see when we reveal in Finder, it's pointing to our original media folder, and because of a setting that I had on my import preferences, Final Cut is going ahead and copying those Resolve renders into this new event. So let's go ahead and take a look at the directory that Final Cut is referencing in the original media folder, and you'll see those V1 clips that Resolve made, and V2 that references the video track that all the media lives on. That's what those V1 and V2, V3, V4 things mean. And when we step into Final Cut, you'll see under the import preferences, because I have copy files to Final Cut events folder selected, Final Cut, when it brings in the XML and references the media, it automatically copies that media. You can choose whether or not you want to have that setting on, but just know that if you do, all of the Resolve renders that you make will be placed into a new event referencing that original media, so all of your media will be in that one folder, or you can keep it in the directory you specified in Resolve. Anyway, let's see how our round trip from Resolve did. When we go back to our first clip and we step back and forth between our original and Resolve sequence, we'll see this first raw clip matches up identically. However, our second one doesn't. When we flip back to our original sequence, remember we set our Spatial Conform setting to fill. That was not applied in our round trip from Resolve. And in our third clip, our transform adjustments and rotation adjustments seem to have applied. However, when we switch back and forth, you'll see it's subtly off, and that's because our Spatial Conform setting did not come through. So the bottom line, Spatial Conform settings don't work very well when you're going to and from Resolve. Now it appears that our Multicam clips have come through in and out successfully. These match up identically, and this is very good news. This didn't used to work in previous versions of Final Cut 10 coming in and out of Resolve. However, when we look at our synchronized clips, this grade does not resemble this grade, and there was no color adjustment made here. So even though you can specify Resolve to bring in primary color correction information, I would not expect Resolve to bring that information through accurately. And when we look at the next clip that had the vignette on it, this is in our old sequence. When we flip back to our other sequence, not only is our primary grade off, but it also appears that our secondary grade is off as well. In fact, it wasn't even applied to that clip. So the bottom line, color correction information coming to and from Final Cut 10 to Resolve can't really be relied on. Now, let's take a look at the clip that had the keying information on top of the motion background. It's obvious that the key was not applied, so let's take a look at the inspector. there has been no keying effect that came in and out from Resolve here. And let's see what happens when we reapply that key to the image. Let's see how our motion background looks. So I'm going to take the key here, I'm going to put it on the clip, and our motion background settings on the generator, as you can see, are no longer the same. So basically, our motion generator has been reset to its default settings. So the lesson that you need to be aware of here is that effect settings that you alter from their default values will not be reapplied in the sequences that come back from Resolve, and you need to be aware of that. When we move to the next set of clips that were the split screen adjusted clips, this is our old sequence. Let's see how they look in our Resolve sequence. So I'm going to step forward and let's go over to these clips. And as you can see, our plugins, just as the effects were not applied on the other set of clips, they have not been applied here. And when we look in the inspector, those plugins have not gone to and from Resolve. No effects have been applied. And lastly, when we look at our drop zone, it is a blank canvas compared to what was there before. The settings, as in the previous motion generator, have gone back to their default values. So bottom line, motion projects, effects, and drop zones, etc., none of that is going to pass through to and from Resolve. So my recommendation would be to do your fine-tuning of effects and generators and motion settings after you have come back from Resolve. Now let's take a look and see how speed-adjusted clips perform going to and from Resolve. I have a group of clips similar to the ones that I had in the previous sequence with varying types of speed effects. In the first one, they've been accelerated. The second clip is slower. I have a reverse, and then I have a ramp, a couple ramps actually, into an instant replay. Pretty much I put every possible type of speed effect to do a test to see what comes in and what doesn't come in from Resolve. So let's go ahead and export this XML. I'm going to call it Resolve Speed and put it in our to Resolve XML folder. And then we're going to jump into Resolve, into our old project that still has all of our same clips in the media pool. And this is kind of a cool trick where you can bring in multiple XMLs into the same project and it's going to reference the same media, and also you would have access to the grades that you've made to that media. So I'm going to bring in this XML here, Resolve Speed, and since all of our clips are in the media pool, we don't need to check any of this stuff. It's just going to automatically import our source clips into the media pool. I'm going to check color information for whatever reason, and as you can see, we get all kinds of error warnings, and that's because it says compound clips with a time map are not supported. Time map cannot combine forward and reverse speeds. Pretty much our complicated time remapping clips did not come through. Only 2 clips appear to have come through. And by the way, the clips that had errors are not actually compound clips. They're multicam, synchronized clips, but there are actually no technical compound clips that appear in this sequence. So the bottom line is our speed adjustments have sent Resolve a little haywire, doesn't know how to handle them. The only 2 clips that seem to have come through is the clip at the very beginning, which was sped up to 400% at a consistent rate, and that was a regular red raw clip. And our third clip, which is the retimed reverse clip, came through with no problems. Our red raw clip actually that was slowed down, believe it or not, had problems. All of our multicam clips did not come through, and our synchronized clip that was set to 50% didn't come through either. So the point of this is that I'd be very careful when using speed adjusted clips in Final Cut 10 going to and from Resolve. My real recommendation would be to duplicate your project before sending it to Resolve, and then going through that new project and moving all of your speed adjustment clips and putting a marker on them up to above the magnetic timeline, and then going and removing all of your speed effects from those clips. And then once you're back from Resolve, you can go and reapply those speed changes and then drop them back into your sequence. There's going to be a gap directly beneath it. It's a pretty straightforward process, and just use copy and paste attributes to reapply your speed changes when you're back from Resolve, and you should be fine. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is how to handle compound clips going to and from Resolve. I have a full finished short film here that's been baked into a compound clip that has a aspect ratio applied to the end of it there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this XML, and we're going to see whether we can get a compound clip to come in. So I'm going to save that to my to Resolve XML folder. And now we're going to jump back into Resolve and bring in this XML into the same project and see how we do. So I'm going to right click, and like I did earlier, import XML. I'm going to find the compound clip XML, and there it is. I'm going to open that one up, and there you go. It's not going to happen. There's way too much going on in that clip. Resolve doesn't know what to do. So what do we do if we have compound clips in our sequence? Sadly, you're going to probably have to break them apart to bring them into Resolve. So let's go ahead and try that. Break apart clip items. It's going to now show you the full edit there. And let's try and export an XML here and bring that into Resolve. So I'm going to go to Export XML, and I'll rename this Resolve Compound _ 02. Save it. Let's go jump back into Resolve and try the same process again. Right click and go to Import XML, and we'll bring in the Compound Clip 02 XML, and the dialog pops up. This is a good sign. We'll use size and color information. Click OK. It's going to go reference our original clips to this short, so it's going to take a second to find everything. So let's give Resolve a minute here, and there we go. And it's found all of our clips. All the thumbnails are loading into our media pool. And when you bring in an XML, Resolve automatically finds the clips if you have the box selected to do that. And there's all of our media spread out. I probably would have prepped this better if I knew I was going to be bringing it into Resolve, but the fact remains that it was able to find our sequence this time as opposed to when we brought it in as a compound clip. So the verdict on compound clips is, if you're going to and from Resolve, break them apart. You can always reapply those settings when they come back from Resolve and make a new compound clip there. But bottom line, compound clips sadly do not work yet, and I would not use them going to and from Resolve. Anyway, let's go ahead and quickly recap what we went through here. So Red Raw adjustments do work. So any adjustments you make in Final Cut or Red Cine X Pro will be translated over to Resolve. However, Spatial Conform settings that you make to your Red Raw footage probably will not transfer. However, your transform properties such as position, rotation, and scale should transfer. So if you're worried about that, my recommendation would be to, instead of using Spatial Conform, use the transform settings. Multicam clips should come through. There are a couple small issues. If you have large multicam clips with DSLR footage, you may have some issues. And that's because DSLRs tend not to record timecode, and that may resolve some issues if there are large multicam clips. Primary color corrections, while those do transfer over, they don't necessarily transfer over accurately. So I'm going to go ahead and say that they don't work. The same with secondary corrections, except these don't even come through at all. So if you use a vignette or you're trying to isolate a color and you want that to come through in Resolve, you need to do it in Resolve. Motion generators, plugins, and effects, these do not work. Your settings will not come over. However, it will return your original generator at its default settings to your sequence when you come out of Resolve, but nothing you do beforehand to adjust it will come through. And speed adjustments are problematic as well. You might be able to get away with some constant speed changes. However, any variable speed or anything complicated probably isn't going to work. And finally, compound clips are not currently supported by Resolve. You may get lucky in a couple instances with simple ones. However, I would not plan on having my compound clips work in Resolve. I would break them apart before bringing them in there. Anyway, that'll pretty much do it for the Final Cut 10 to Resolve workflow. And if you're looking to get some more info on the ins and outs and how to properly use Resolve to color grade your footage, there's a couple other tutorials I can recommend. The first one, and this is how I learned how to use it, I came from Apple Color originally and switched over, was Patrick Inhofer's Tao of Color DaVinci Resolve Masterclass. It is extremely in-depth. It goes through every feature of the software. I really recommend it. It hasn't all been updated for DaVinci Resolve 9, but basically the fundamentals, and if you're new to color grading, that's the place to go. Try there. And if you need something that's a little more slimmed down and you just want to get going in the software, Ripple Training has one as well. That should be updated to Resolve 9, I think, really soon, and if it hasn't already. But go check out the Ripple Training website if you just need something on how the buttons work, basically. So anyway, hope that really helped you guys. All the steps from this tutorial have been posted in the description below, and if you have any questions or things you notice that you want to add to this workflow, post them in the comment section and I'll try and get back to you. At the end of the day, the goal here is to make all of this stuff as seamless and easy as possible, and I'd love your feedback on how to make it all better. And if you watch this and it all went totally over your head or you just don't feel like doing it, well, this is what I do for a living, so feel free to hire me either to consult on your movie or to finish your film for you if that's what you need. So if you want to get in touch, just drop me an email over at sam@wemakemovies.org. And lastly, if you're wondering what this whole We Make Movies thing is, check us out over at wemakemovies.org, or if you live in LA or Toronto, sign up for our newsletter and then come to one of our events. I'll see you guys next time.
And cut!